Here's lesson 112, number 18. It wants me to find cosine A sine B for cosine 75 sine 15, use exact values. So I'm supposed to use an identity, and I know that in your practice problems they have been having you develop identities. And so I don't know if you have these memorized or not, but if you don't, what you can do, like when I look on my sheet, I can't find any identity that says cosine A sine B. Like I look all over, I cannot find it. But then I remember that your book keeps, every lesson they keep having problems where you have to kind of develop these identities using your sum and difference identities. So if you remember, if you've probably done many problems like this, you find two of these sum and difference identities that have cosine A sine B, because that's what we're going for, cosine A sine B. So I have found it, cosine A sine B, right in this little area right here. So I know I can add or subtract these two identities and solve for cosine A sine B. It turns out, so some of you guys might be able to do this in your mind, you know, like kind of, well, if I add this top equation with the second equation, that's going to cancel out. I don't want it to cancel out. So what I would do, did I say add? What I would do is subtract. Because if I subtract, then these will cancel out. And when you subtract a negative, and I'll get two of these. So I've done that already. I'll show you. I just did it right here. I wrote the top identity here, and I wrote the bottom identity here. And instead of adding them like we normally would do, I'm just saying, like, I guess you can go through and multiply the whole bottom by -1 or whatever. But in my mind, I just took this, subtract that, and that just gave me this part right here. And then I took this thing, subtract that thing, it goes away. And then this part, subtract that part. Well, when you minus a negative, you're adding. So that gave me 2 cosine A sine B's, but then I wanted to solve it for cosine A sine B because that's the identity they want. So I divided by 2 on both sides of the equal sign. And then I went and I saw that I have to go sine A plus B minus sine A minus B. That's equal to cosine A sine B. So, and I need, so cosine A, this must be A then, you know, and this must be B. Cosine 75, so A is 75 and B is 15. And so I had to add 75 plus 15 right here, and that gave me the 90. And then I went 75 minus 15, that gave me the 60. And then I looked those up on my unit circle. You could draw triangles as well, but sine of 90 is 1, so that's for the 1. And then sine of 60 is, there's 60, root 3 over 2, and I was going to leave it like that, but then I remembered, well, it wants me to simplify it. So there's a couple ways you could do that. You could say, oh, I'm getting a common denominator up here, and you could write this as 2 over 2, and then you'd have 2 minus root 3 all over 2, and then when you flip this up, it would, you know, like when you divide by 2 over 1, that's the same as multiplying by a half, and you get the 4. Or you could, another way to think of it, the way I did it, is I said, I want to rid myself of that denominator right there, so I'll just multiply everything by 2. Multiply that by 2, you get 2. Multiply this by 2, you got rid of your denominator, and multiply that down there by 2. Either way you think of it, this is the answer.